Good morning, everyone. How are we all? Thank you so much for joining me this morning for our gorgeous Lazy Days brush party. So we'll go through all of the equipment that we're going to be needing this morning, and then I will run through how to use YouTube most effectively, and then we'll get started with our gorgeous paintings. So my name is Becky, by the way, guys, so hi. Yeah, cool. So paints that we're going to be needing today are all of our primary colours. So we'll start with yellow. So we'll need quite a lot of yellow. If I can just get my paint. Okay. So we've got loads of yellow. There's lots of yellow and blue mixed in with this painting. So your main colour are yellow and blue and red. They're our primary colours. We don't actually need as much red as the blue and yellow because we've only got a little bit of pink to add in our flowers and leaves. So it's up to you what kind of colours you use, really. So you can actually mix up any colour with the primary colours. So with those three ones, you can mix up any colour you like. But you might want to use a ready mix paint if you've got any. So if you've got like any mixed purples that you've got in a pot, or you know, any other colours that you want to add, feel free to pop those on your palette as well. So I'm just going to be using blue, yellow, red, and then also a little bit of white and black as well. So all of our primary colours and black and white, plus any other colour you want to add. There we go. So I'll just show you my palette. Excuse all my other mix of colours there. So I've got white, yellow, blue, black and red. So yeah, please add anything else that you want to add in. You don't have to stick with the same colour scheme or pattern or anything that I've got here. You can change it as much as you want to. So I will explain things in steps. So I'll explain how to use the brushes, how to mix the colours, everything that I'm going to be doing here. So I'll give you all the tools that you need, and then you can take it in whatever direction you want. So the more wacky, the better, I think. So yeah, they're all of our colours. And I'll just go through the brushes and canvas. So I'm working on a really large canvas here. So I'm going to have a massive sloth on mine, which is quite cute. He's a very cute little sloth. And then, so yeah, I'm working on a 16 by 20 inch canvas. But I will be explaining things in terms of halves and mapping out things so you can place things on different size canvases. So yeah, anything to paint on is really good. Brushes wise, you actually only really need 2 brushes for this one. But if you have a third brush, that's a bonus. So we need a large brush for the background. So one a bit like this. So if you've got the brush party set, we've got the diagonal brush or the square brush. Either of those is going to be fine. Then we've also got a smaller cropped brush. This is a 3/8 brush, this one here. So you can just use these two if you want to. They work perfectly well for everything we need to do for this bit. The only thing you might find a bit tricky with one of these brushes is the face. So if you have got an option of using a smaller brush as well, if you've got one like this, then I would maybe grab it as well, just in case you find it a bit tricky, because it is a little bit hard with the smiley face to do it with a larger brush, but it's up to you. So you maybe try it with 2, and then if you want to add that third brush in, you absolutely can do. But you definitely want a large brush for the background, and then one of these 2 brushes will be fine. So there are the brushes. Last 2 things we'll need is a pot of water and a bit of tissue as well to dry off our brushes, to make sure all of our paints are nice and crisp and clean. So they're nice and bright as well. So we'll start with the background and we'll build up all the layers little by little so that we build it up little bits at a time. So we're all going to be at the same sort of stage, hopefully. But in terms of YouTube, the timing is actually down to you guys. So if you wanted to take things a bit slower, especially with our lovely sloth, or even with the background actually, you can pause the video and you can rewind it as well. So I'm painting along live with you guys. And we are going to go in steps. So if at any point you want to stop after a step, you can pause it and you can take your time and then come back in whenever you're ready. So yeah, the main thing is just to enjoy it. And I would really love to see all of your paintings shared with us online or through email, because I love, love, love seeing all the different characters that we get with all of our animal paintings. So the main thing is that we name our sloths as well and give them a bit of a character. I'm not decided on a name yet. I think we've got to paint it first and then you can decide on a name for our sloths. So I think that's pretty much everything you need to know. The other thing to keep a lookout for is the live chat feature. So if you do have a Google account or a YouTube account, then you can comment in that live chat feature there, and I'll be able to respond to your messages while we're painting along live. So if you've got any questions, or if you want to have a general chit chat, let me know who's painting with you, or with me, should I say, who's painting with me, then you can let me know, and yeah, we can stay in contact that way. So yeah, take lots of photos through the event so we can see all the different stages that you go through to get our lovely, lovely sloths. So we're going to start with the middle of our background, and we're going to mix up a really nice light minty green colour. So if you've got a ready mixed green in a pot, then feel free to use that. I'm just going to be mixing yellow, blue and white together. So I'd start by dipping your larger brush in the water, just to make sure the paints are going to flow really nicely. There's nothing worse than when the paint's too sticky and it doesn't blend in with the rest of the paints. So I'm going to grab a bit of white, move it to a new part of the palette, somewhere that's clean-ish. And I'm just mixing that water round in with the white. So I'm just popped it on this little part of the palette, just mixing it round with the white. And then into the white, I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow and a little bit of blue. So we're making a really light blue. There we go. So I'd also, once you've got that colour mixed, I would go back into the water, pick up a little bit more, mix it round again, just to make sure it's going to be nice and not runny as such, but like not flowy either, but yeah, kind of flowy, more like an ink kind of texture, so a little bit less sticky than the paint itself. There we go. So I've got this really nice minty colour, and I'm going to pick up quite a lot on the brush, and all we're going to do is start in the middle. Using the flat part of the brush, I'm going to paint in a very messy oval kind of shape. So it's nice and long, because I've got a big portrait canvas, so I need to make sure this is going to fill the canvas really nicely. So I'm making it nice and big in the centre. So I'm just using the flat part of the brush, pushing that paint around. This is the lightest part of the canvas, so I might even add a little bit more white. So just pick up a little bit more white on the tip of the brush without any other colour in there, and go back into the middle, just so we've got a really, really lovely light green. There we go. So as we get bigger and bigger, what we're going to be doing is adding in more and more yellow and blue to make the green brighter and brighter as we get towards the edge of the canvas. So I'm going to add a bit more water to that paint, and we're going to keep mixing on the same part of the palette, so the colour is going to change very gradually. It's not going to be a drastic change. So into that lighter green that we've got on the palette, I'm going to add a bit more yellow and a bit more blue and mix it around, and it should just go a little bit darker, or a little bit more of a brighter green rather than a pastel green. And we need to carry on going around the edge of the circle, or the oval that we've added to our canvas. Just keep going all the way around. So we're making that circle bigger and bigger, and like I said, we're just going to be adding more of those darker colours to it every time we work our way out of this circle. So towards the edges, we're going to get darker and darker. So I would take lots of photos as the background starts to progress, so that, yeah, when you look back at the end, you can see all your different stages that you've gone through to, yeah, get to that lovely background. So you don't even have to do green if you don't want to. If you want to change it and do any other colour, please do. I think the more different it is, the better, I think. I think just be as creative as you want to be. So I'm just going to add a bit more blue. So I would work quite quickly with this background, just to make sure that the paints don't dry too quick, because otherwise we're going to struggle getting that blend. Because what we don't want to have is big stripes going around the circle, because if you've got quite sharp lines, it's going to be a little bit tricky to cover those up later on. So once you've added that slightly darker circle, or slightly darker oval around the inside parts, we then want to go back in to the middle bit to blend out those colours. So I'm just going to do lots of brush strokes all the way around. There we go. And just every couple of minutes, just pick up a bit more water, a bit more paint. And we're getting darker and darker, brighter and brighter as we get to the corner. Okay, so I might even add a bit more blue this time. So rather than loads and loads of yellow, I'm going to mix a bit more blue in it to change the green a little bit more. Make it go a bit more of a jungle kind of green, I think, rather than a lime green. So I've just added in a bit more blue than before to make it go a little bit more of a bluey green. And just keep going. So I'm always using that flat part of the brush to get nice big brush strokes all the way around. There we go. All the way to the edges. So you might be super speedy and you might already be at the edges, but if you're not, don't panic. Just keep going, taking it nice and slowly. But if you are at the edges already, feel free to pause the video and you can start wafting your canvases a little bit to get it nice and dry for the next step. Because obviously if you're working on a slightly smaller canvas, it might not take you as long. So feel free to pause whenever you want to, or you can be a bit more creative and add a bit more to your backgrounds if you want to, if you're a bit speedier. You can add some other colours in. You can do whatever you like. But it is absolutely fine to do exactly what I'm doing as well. So if you if you really like this one, just keep it as it is, absolutely fine. And you might find that when you get to the end, you might think, actually, I really like it as it is. I'm not going to add anything extra. And that's totally fine. I think he's super cute as he is. So there's no pressure to change it if you don't want to. Go all the way to the edges. I might add a little bit of white back in just to make it a little bit more pastel-y. So I'm not making it any lighter, I'm just adding in a tiny little dot of white so it doesn't go too much of a bright green, keeping it a nice toned down colour. Okay. So as you get towards the edges, you can start doing bigger brush strokes every single time. So you're covering a bit more of the canvas with each brush stroke. And when you get to the edges, we definitely need to be painting around those sides as well. So make sure you're painting all down those sides of the canvases so that it looks lovely and professional when you get to the end as well. Because when you take a step back from your canvas, there's nothing more frustrating than seeing those edges not finished. So you can always do it in one colour all the way around, or you could change the colour. You could do a different colour to what's on the front. That's absolutely fine. But hopefully these are all going to end up on your walls at home, and they're all going to look so professional with all those edges painted. It makes a big difference, trust me. Okay, a bit more paint. I'm going through quite a lot of paint for this background. Feel free to turn your canvas round if you find it easier. If you're painting one side, it's also really good actually to turn it round so you can see that your lightest part is definitely in the middle. So can you see I've got a bit weird over here? I've got a bit long on that bit. So I'm just going to make it a little bit more circular. There we go. Better. So yeah, keep turning it round, and that way you'll definitely make sure that your circle is a nice even shape all the way around and all the way to the edges. Okay, so I'm hoping we're all okay up till now. I'm very excited to see these at the end. It's always really important to keep taking a little step back from your painting as well. So when you get, when you're doing a couple of brush strokes, take a step back, see it from a little bit of a distance, take a little photo as well. And then you'll be able to see if there's any bits that need a bit more paint or anything else. Can you see my middle is still a little bit lopsided, so I'm going to go back in, I think, in a minute and make my middle just a bit more central, I think. So keep going back to that water. That's really, really important. You want loads of water with the paint all the time so it can spread across that canvas. There we go. So can you see my middle is a little bit skewish at the minute, so I'm going to go back to my really, really light green by adding loads and loads of white back in. And I'm just going to make this a little bit more circular, a bit more ovally. Ovally? Is ovally a word? Oval-like. Okay, so just making that a little bit more rounded, a bit more even all the way around. And it's quite nice to add in a couple of streaks as well, actually. So once you've got that lighter colour back on, if you needed to change that middle bit, feel free to add a couple of those lighter streaks in the slightly darker parts of your canvas, because that will look really lovely too. There we go, so that's looking a little bit better. So when you have done your background and you've kind of got this swirly, circular shape going on, then I would, again, take a big step back, and it might be worth just wafting your canvases slightly. So I would hold around the back of your canvas like this, because we might have painted the edges. If you've got edges painted like mine, you don't want to be getting paint absolutely everywhere, so it might be worth just holding around the back of the edges like this, holding it underneath and just gently wafting it up and down like this to try and get it a little bit more dry, because we're going to be painting our lovely vines and leaves in the background next. So that's the first step done. This is very exciting. I can't wait to see these. They always turn out really, really cute. So yeah, keep wafting it, making sure it's nice and dry. Might be worth putting a hairdryer on it, or if you're painting outside, like, you know, hold it to the wind or pop it out the window or something, just don't drop them. Looks like it's going to be a really lovely day today, which is nice. We've had so much rain recently. It's a bit rubbish. So you can blow on it, you can waft it, do whatever you need to do to get those canvases nice and dry for our next step. Because if our canvases are still wet for the next little bit, it's just going to pull up this background layer. So we want to make sure it's nice and dry so that our colours go on nice and crisp. Oh, just be careful. If you have painted the edges, try not to grab hold of them, because you'll end up with paint absolutely everywhere. And we're only 20 minutes in, and I've already got paint on my legs, on my hands, on my arms. It happens every time, I can't help it. Okay. So make sure you've got maybe an old top on or an apron or something, because it might get a little bit messy throughout the painting. So let's just check that the backgrounds are nice and dry. So it might be worth just tapping your canvases super lightly. And if you've got lots of paint that come off on your hands, then it might still be a bit wet. So it might be worth just wafting it a little bit more. Mine is so nearly dry, so I'm just going to leave it for maybe 30 more seconds. So if you do have that live chat feature, let me know how you're getting on with your backgrounds, and I can slow down, or I can go back over any colours or anything like that. But the next couple of steps is to add in those vines. So we'll start with a nice bright yellow colour to get these stripes. I'm not sure if you can see them in the camera. It's so subtle, but when you've finished, it does stand out quite nicely. It just makes the background a bit more detailed. So we've got these vine-like, tree-like lines in the background. Then we're going to add in all of our leaves and flowers and things. And then we'll do our log. No, that's not a log. We'll do our tree. And then our sloth. So we will do it layer by layer. And the sloth is going to be lots of shapes all built up to make the end shape. So we will break it down so it's easy to follow. So I don't want anybody to be worried about that sloth. It's going to be lovely. And we're so impressed with these ones. So I might just waft it for a couple more seconds just to make sure it's really, really dry. And I'm going to give my large brush a really good rinse off in the water to make sure it's nice and clean for the next step. So give it a good rinse off. Wipe it on the side of the cup as well. It's going to help to keep it nice and keep those bristles nice and crisp. And it'll get a lot of the water out. So it's not too thick with water. So when you guys are ready, we'll mix up our next colour. So what we can do is we can carry on the same green that we used earlier. So on the same part of the palette, I'm going to grab a whole load of white, pop it down, and I'm going to grab a little blob of yellow, and I'm going to go back in with a bit more white. So I'm making a really, really pale like lemony yellow with a slight tint of lime in it. So it's a really pale yellow with a tiny dash of green. Okay, so I'll show you my colour. I might even add a bit more yellow. So the main colours in this is yellow and white. And because we're mixing on top of the green, it'll have a tiny bit of green still in there. So this kind of colour. Okay. So once we've got those colours on there, I'm going to wipe it off on the side of the palette to make sure it's not too thick with paint, because we're now going to be using our brush slightly differently. So we're going to be using our brush like a blade. So we're going like this way around now, rather than using the flat part. So we're going to have our long bristles pointing up. So if you've got the same brush as me, and you've got long bristles and short bristles, those long bristles need to be facing up. Okay, so these vines are pretty much all over the background, but they don't have to be in a set place. So you can put them wherever you want them to go. So if you don't have the brush like I have, and you've got a square brush where you've got all the bristles the same length, then you just need to hold it vertically like this, so all the bristles are going up in a line. And then we will start from the top of the canvas, and we're going to drag the brush down really slowly, kind of moving it side to side a little bit so it's not a straight line. And then off of this one, what we can do, I'm pressing really lightly by the way, so the line's coming out really, really thin, and it's not like a solid line all the way down. Some bits are a little bit broken up. So after they've done this straight line, straight-ish line, we can start a little bit further away from that line, and then we can pull the brush down and twist it so it joins up in different places, and then we can overlap all these different lines like this. So you might just do a couple of dashes that don't quite go all the way down. You might just do a couple of little flicks like this. You can go wherever you want them to go, but I wouldn't do them all the way down to the bottom, and I wouldn't do them all the way at the top. I would try and vary them a little bit and leave lots of little gaps in between, and they can go right through the middle as well. So all the way across. Might add a bit more blue into this again. I think it's got a bit too yellowy. I think I want them to be a little bit more subtle. So if they're coming out really, really bright, it might be worth just adding a little bit more blue in, or a bit more green, depending on what kind of colour you've used. So some of them can join up together to make them look like branches and vines all intertwining together. But it's really subtle. You don't want anything too bright at this point. So I'm not going all the way down to the bottom, and I'm not going all the way up to the top. They're kind of staggered a little bit all over the place. And now we can switch back, or switch to a smaller brush. So if you've got a brush like this one, then I would use this brush. Or actually, you can use any of these brushes really. So I'll show you how to use all three of these brushes for our leaves. So if you've got a really big canvas like I have, you might want to just carry on with a large brush so that you can get nice big leaf shapes in there, and it just fills the canvas a little bit easier. So I'll show you that in a bit more detail. It's the same rule with this brush as well. So if you've got the cropped brush, if you've got a slightly smaller canvas, it might be nice using this brush, but I will show you how to use that as well. And then if you've got a really tiny canvas, or if you're struggling with these brushes, then I would use a smaller one. So if you've got a big canvas and you've got a brush like mine, or a square brush, then what I would do is carry on with the same green, or same light green that we've just used for the vines, I would add in some leaves in the bottom left corner and some leaves in the top right corner. So we're adding them in these diagonal corners. So to get the leaf shape, what we're going to do is press onto canvas and lift off towards our shorter bristles. So can you see I'm just doing a little press and flick, all different directions. I think the quicker you do them, the nicer they look. And they can go all off the edge of the canvas. They can start to fade off a little bit as they go into the middle. But the main part that we're filling is the bottom left corner and the top right. So as it goes along the top here, along this side up towards the top, you can start doing less and less, and maybe even making them a little bit smaller as well. So the main bulk of leaves are in this bottom corner and in the top. So they can be really randomly placed. There's no set place for these to go, as long as they're somewhere in the bottom and the top corners. But yeah, you can fade them off a little bit more in different places. You can do a couple of little rogue leaves that kind of float up a little bit higher. And then we're going to do the same thing in the top corner as well. So just little dashes like this towards your shorter bristles. So that's with the large brush. And if you would like to use the smaller cropped one, which is this brush here, then it's the same kind of thing. So they're always going towards those shorter bristles, like this. If you notice, they're obviously just a lot smaller because we're using a smaller brush. So you might even want to use both. You might use the large brush for some of them, and then for a slightly different colour maybe, you could use your smaller brush to get some different sizes in there. So just get a bit more of a darker green so that you can actually see it. Okay. So you see they're a little bit smaller using the smaller brush. And then if you're struggling with those two brushes, don't panic. You can use your little rounded brush as well. And it's the same technique with the brush, although you don't have to worry about which way round you're holding it. All you've got to worry about is that you're pulling the brush towards the handle. So I will show you a little bit closer to the camera so you can see the brush stroke. So you want plenty of paint on the brush, and can you see the handle is pointing to the right? So what I'm going to do is press onto the canvas nice and hard, and then I'm going to lift off again as I'm going towards the right hand side. So it's going towards the handle. I don't know why my colour is coming out so dark. It's not that kind of colour. So carry on with that light colour. So the really light green that we used for the vines in the background. We want plenty of those, and then we're going to mix up a slightly darker colour to get these lovely, almost blue leaves in. Which we'll do in just a second. So carry on with your lightest colour, using whichever brush you find easiest. So if you're using the small brush, you won't get as many out of one brush load of paint, so you might need to top it up a few more times. And remember, we're fading them off a little bit, so we're doing less and less as we go along the sides and the bottom and the top and the right hand side as well. Okay, so when you're happy with the amount of light leaves, then we can mix up a slightly darker green, which is going to be just yellow and blue together, so no white in there at all. And I think I'm going to use my middle brush. I think this is the easiest one to use, personally, but it's up to everybody to decide which one you prefer. So I'm going to mix blue, and I would start this on a new part of the palette, so we've not got any white in there. So just blue and yellow, mix that round so you get a nice dark green. There we go, so I've moved on to a new area. Got a lovely bluey green, really dark. I'm going to add a bit more water into that as well. And then I'm going to add in lots of leaves. Same technique, so we're doing the same brush strokes as before. And I'm going to be going in the gaps, over the top, literally wherever you want them to go. Again, there's no set exact place for these leaves as long as they're in those corners. And you can make these leaves really big if you wanted to. You can make them a little bit more like fancy. I'll just bring that a bit closer so you can see. So rather than just doing one brush stroke per leaf, what you can do is start with one brush stroke, pull it out to the side a little bit, do a little flick. You can do the same thing on the other side. And it just makes them a little bit bigger. So that's with one brush stroke, and you can do another one with a bit more of a curve. And that way you get lots of different shaped leaves, and they're all a little bit different. Okay, so I'm doing lots in the corners. I'm going to fade them off a little bit along the bottom edge. And then same thing in the top right corner. Same green, so the slightly darker green. And these are going all different directions. The more random they are, so they've got no structure to them, the more it's going to look a bit more like a jungle or a forest. If they're a bit too neat, it kind of looks like it's a bit of wallpaper. I wanted to make it look like he's out in the wild. So really, the messier the better for this one. Okay, so once we've done a couple of those dark green ones, the next colour we can do is, in this one we've got some neat blue as well, so you could do some neat blue ones if you want to. I'm just going to do one or two of those, not a lot, so I'm just going to use the same brush, a little bit of neat blue by itself, and you can do these as flowers if you wanted to. You don't all have to be leaves. So when you start going on to the colours, we can add in any colour that you like. So if you look at this one, we've got some pinks, there's some reds in there, and to make them look like flowers, what we can do is the same brush stroke that we've done for the leaves, but we are just going to be pressing them round like this to make a flower shape. So they can go all different directions with the centre that kind of looks like a starfish. I'm going to add in a couple more petals. There we go, and then we can add little dots in the middle with a different colour if you want to. But they don't all have to have all different, like a whole circle of petals. You can just like one or two. Just do little dashes. But yeah, this is now where you can get really, really creative. So you don't just have to do blue. You can do pinks and reds and even more green ones if you want to. You can do lots of dots and things, which I'm going to be doing in a second. So I'm going to be doing lots of white dots to make it look nice and flowery as well. I quite like that blue. I think that's quite a nice blue actually against the background. You could do some bright yellow flowers, just yellow by itself if you want to as well. I'm probably going to stop there with the blue. And I'm actually I really like this pink in there. I think it stands out really nicely. So I'm going to rinse off the brush a little bit. And I'm going to add red with a little bit of white into it to get a slightly lighter red than what we've got on the palette. So red and white to make a nice, I'm going to make it quite a dark pink. And when this goes against the green background, it stands out so bright. It almost looks like a highlighter sort of paint. You see how bright that comes out. So you can do lots of little pink flowers and dots. But yeah, use any colour you like really. There's no right or wrong with this bit. I'm going to do a couple that are just red by themselves. Because it's on a green background, any colour that goes on top is going to be so bright. So you can make this as colourful or as monotone as you like. So you can keep it all greens and blues, or you can add these bright colours in as well. Completely up to you. I'm not going to do too many more of these colours. Just a couple. I think I'm going to do a few yellow ones by themselves, and then I'm going to add lots of dots. So I'm going to rinse off the brush, and I'm going to add some yellow to it, so just neat yellow by itself. I'm going to do a couple more flicks just to fill in the rest of the gaps. So I've got lots of leaves in the top corners, the top corner and the bottom corner. And it's like a nice mid colour, like yellow. So it kind of goes in between the greens and the blues and the oranges and the yellows and the reds and things. So you could even, yeah, add oranges in there, like orange leaves and stuff. You could add loads and loads of colour into this. Okay, and then when we've done all the colour and we're happy with the leaves and the flowers, all that background stuff, then we can turn our brushes round the other way so that we're using the wooden part of the brush. So I'll give your brush a little bit of a rinse off just to make sure we've not got any paint on those bristles. Give it a little wipe on the tissue as well to make sure those bristles are nice and clean. And then I'm going to dip the wooden part of the brush, so I'm using it backwards now, wooden part of the brush, into some white paint. So I'm picking up loads and loads of white on the end of the brush, no water or anything, and I'm going to add in lots of dots all the way through the leaves. So these can be really random, they can be all over the place. You could do like bunches of white dots. You can do them all by themselves. And just bring it a bit closer so you can see everything we've got. So mine has come out a lot more colourful than the original one. Obviously I'm feeling very summery today. But everybody's is now going to be slightly different because obviously everyone's got different preferences. So you might not want to have lots of colour, which is totally fine. And you can stick with just greens and blues and yellows, and that's absolutely fine. There is no right or wrong. And I'm going to just do a couple of little dots in that flower. Okay, and I'm going to do a couple more white dots in the top corner as well. And then the next bit we'll do is add in our tree where our sloth is going to be hanging from. Okay, let's do a couple more, a little bit lower down, higher up as well on that side. Okay, so I'll just bring mine a little bit closer so you can see. And then the next bit we'll do is adding in that big tree that goes across our canvas. So I would give whatever brush you were using a really good rinse off and dry it on some tissue as well. And we're going to actually go back to our large background brush. So rinse off all of those brushes, make sure they're all super clean, and then go back to that large brush. And we're going to mix up a brown next. So take a step back from your painting. Make sure you take a photo as well so you can see it as a whole picture. And then, yeah, we'll add in some more details in just a second. So I'm really hoping that everyone's okay with what we've got so far. I'm really excited to see all the different colours that you've added in. Yeah, all the different styles that we've got, because we might have lots of flowers, we might have lots of leaves. You know, everyone's going to be a little bit different, which is going to be fantastic. So I'm going to go back to my large brush and I'm going to mix up a brown. So the best way to mix up a brown is to add red and a little bit of yellow and black together. So the main colours are red and black, and we're going to lighten it up with a little bit of yellow. So give that a really good rinse off, make sure it's nice and clean. And again, we're going to find a new part of the palette. So if your palette's looking a bit full, it might be worth grabbing another plate or palette, whatever you're using, just to make sure we get these colours nice and crisp. I'm starting to run out of space here. So I'm going to start with red as the main colour. Then I'm going to add a little bit of yellow into it to make it a slightly orange colour. a little bit of yellow, and then into that colour I'm going to add a big blob of black. We want quite a lot of black because what happens is if there's too much yellow in there and not a lot of black, then it goes a bit green, and that's fine because we've got a green background, but we want it to stand out and make it actually look like a tree. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow, a bit more red. There we go. So we get a nice dark chocolate brown colour. So what we're going to do next is add in some dots to make sure we're going to get our tree in the right kind of place. So we're definitely going to have enough space for our sloth to fit in. Because what we don't want to do is put our tree too far over to the left-hand side, because we won't have any space for our little sloth to go, and we'll have all the space up here. So we're going to move it quite far over to the right. So we're going to start with a little dot right in the bottom right corner. So in here, with your brush, do a little blob to mark in our starting point. So we're going to do 3 dots. We're going to do one down here, one just off the centre towards the top right corner in here, and then one just a little bit over from the top left corner. So once we've done that the bottom right corner dot, which is this bit in here, I'm going to pick up a bit more paint and I'm going to do another dot that is halfway down the canvas, but just a little bit. Okay, so just do it really slowly. Find halfway first and then just move it a little bit across from the very centre point. And then the last dot we're going to add in is this top dot in here. So I'm going to go just a little bit in from the top left corner. So I'm going across the top, roughly around here. So I would maybe use your hand and maybe mark in about 3 fingers or 4 fingers or even 2 fingers. Either of those are going to be perfect. And then from here, what we need to do is draw in or paint in a line that goes from the bottom all the way up to the top. Now trees aren't particularly, some of them aren't very straight, so a lot of them have got these jaggedy, wobbly lines. So what we need to do is have our long bristles, or just hold the brush on a diagonal edge. So we've got one side pointing to the bottom right corner and one side pointing up to the top left. And what we need to do is pull the brush up. And we're going to go through all of these dots, but can you see I'm kind of pushing it over a little bit to the right? It's not a very straight line. And then I'm going to pull it over a bit more over there, and then back up to the top. So it's a really jaggedy line. And then once we've got that middle line in, which is this line, what we need to do then is make it a little bit bigger on the bottom right side. Otherwise, it's going to look a little bit like a twig, and it definitely doesn't look like it's going to be big enough or thick enough to hold a sloth. So I'm going to make the bottom edge, so from halfway down, I'm going to start making it a little bit wider just by doing another brush stroke right next to the one before. And we can just do it little bits at a time. So I would just do one side first, making one side a little bit bigger. And then I'll do a bit more on the other side as well. There we go. So we're just making it a little bit wider on the bottom right side. And you can add some twigs coming off this bit. I quite like this top bit here, so it kind of looks like there's another branch going off the top. So the best way to add that in is to start at the top of the canvas, long bristles pointing up, or just holding it vertically. So remember, all those bristles are going up in a line. And if you start a little bit more over to the right at the top, you can drag this down into that first branch. This is very exciting. We've actually got a tree in there now. So I'm really hoping that everybody's okay up till now. Please do let me know if you've got any questions, or if you want to send a photo in, if something's troubling you guys or anything like that. If you've got a question about your painting, you can send a photo through the Brush Party Facebook Messenger app, or you can email your photos as well, and I'll be able to see those while we're painting along. So if you've got any questions or something's not gone quite right maybe, or if you want to change something or add something extra, then just send a photo and I'll be able to see those and help you out a little bit more independently. But I'm really hoping that everybody's okay. I'm hoping you're enjoying this. I'm sure your paintings are looking fantastic, which is very exciting. And we're on to the most exciting part of all, which is starting our sloth, which for a little while looks a little bit odd. So I would definitely take photos of every single step, because we're going to start with like circles and lines and ovals and things. So it's going to look really, really odd and quite funny as well for a little bit. And then suddenly when we add in all of his lovely fluff and fur and eyes and nose and claws, then he starts to look like a sloth. So we need to get the basic colour for our sloth. So what we need to do is rinse off that brush, and I'm going to carry on with the same large brush, and all I'm going to do is add a little bit of white into the brown and a little bit of black. So all we're doing is making the brown a little bit more of a grey kind of colour. So not too much white and not too much black, just a little dot of each. So it just very slightly changes that brown to have a slightly more grey tint to it. So we're just mixing on top of that brown we used for the tree. So it's only a tiny bit different, and the best way to test the colour is just to go halfway down the tree, and on the left hand side just do a little dot to make sure you're happy that it's a little bit different to the tree colour. So can you see it's not loads different, but it just means that it's not going to blend in with the tree, because that'll make it really hard to paint for us otherwise. So the first shape we're going to add in is this curved C kind of shape like this. So what we're going to do is start a third of the way down from the top of the canvas. So the best way to find a third is to picture the canvas in 3 equal sections. So if you look, I've got an equal section at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom. So I would actually use your hands to measure this. So a third of the way down from the top is going to be on this line up here. So what I would do is go along, and where you touch the tree, that's where we're going to do our little dot. So let me just go through that again one more time. So we need to picture our canvas in 3 equal sections going across the way. And this is going to be really helpful for any painting you do or anything like that. So a third is you're picturing it in 3 equal sections, and you're going to choose the top one because that's a third of the way down from the top. And we're going to go across, and we're going to fill in the left-hand side of the tree. So I'm going to do a little dot just to the left of the tree, third of the way down. The next dot we're going to do is going to be a third of the way up from the bottom. So it's going to be this little dot in here. So we already know how to find our thirds. So we've done the top third, and now we're going to do the bottom third. So this line in here. I'm going to go all the way along, and I'm going to do a little dot in there. Okay? If you want to go back over those bits again, feel free to pause the video and go back over it as many times as you need to. So a third of the way up from the bottom, third of the way down from the top, 2 little dots to the left-hand side of the tree. Now that's probably the hardest part of the whole painting, trying to get those measurements in. And it doesn't matter if it's not exact. So I wouldn't get a ruler out or anything like that. It's absolutely fine. As long as it's somewhere in the middle of the canvas, we still need to have a little bit of space above this bit for his head to go. So as long as it's not too high up or too low down, you're fine. It's all good. So from here, what we're going to do is add in a C shape. So I'm going to just use the brush with the flat edge, and I'm going to pull it round like this. It's got a nice curve back, joining in to the tree. And then we can fill that in. So mine's got a little bit light actually, so I'm going to add a bit more black into mine. There we go, that's a bit better. And we're literally just filling it in one solid colour. And the good thing is we can always make it a little bit bigger if we need to. And we are going to add hair onto his back as well. So it will start getting a little bit bigger in just a minute. So I wouldn't worry about the size or anything just yet. We'll just get the shape in first, and then we can go in and alter any bits if we need to. So you want a fairly even curve all the way down. Okay, and then next what we're going to add in is an oval shape for his head. So this shape in here. So what we need to do is start so that our brush is on the top of our C shape we've added in, so in this little bit in here. And what we're going to do is add in an oval shape that goes round, and it's going to come over the top of the neck in there. And it also needs to go in front of the tree. So I'm going to pull it a little bit further over the top. Okay, so it looks like his head is just in front, or his face is just in front of the tree. And then we want to blend that in. So we want to make sure that there isn't a big dip in here. So what we need to do is smooth out the top of the head all the way around into the back. So it ends up looking a bit more sloth-like. And at the minute, I think my head is a little bit too tall, so I'm going to make it a little bit lower and blend it down a bit more. Told you it looks a little bit odd for a little while. So this is one of the odd stages where it kind of looks like just a little thing attached to the tree. So we're going to add lots of fluff in just 1 second. So the next step we need to add in is the fur. So I would carry on with your large brush, and all we need to do is we'll start with where the back starts, so in this little bit in here. And what we're going to do is start with the brush with the long bristles pointing in or on a slight diagonal. And I'm just going to flick the brush out like this. So as you're going down and around the back, the fur needs to be curving with the body. So as we're going around, it needs to be going down towards the bottom left corner to start with. And then as we get into that curve, it's starting to point to the bottom right corner. So can you see it's sort of changed a little bit? Okay. And then we need to add a couple of little flicks going around the top of his head as well. So the hair on the head is a little bit different to the hair on the back. So what we'll do is go through that nice and slowly. So on the top of the head, the fur needs to be flicking straight up. So we're going to give him a very cute little hairdo. So long bristles need to be pointing down into the body, and we're going to flick the brush up like this. So can you see his little flicks of hair going up? And then as we go around to the left, the fur is going to start curving around like this, and it's going to join in to the rest of the body in there. And then as we're going around to the right-hand side, so start back at the top again, and the hair is going to go round to the right. So we're giving him a lovely, fluffy face. There we go. So I might make his back a little bit more curved in here. So take a little step back whenever you're ready. And you've done those fluffy bits to make him look like a nice fluffy thing on the side of a tree. And then the next step is to add in his arms and legs. And then we'll go in with some highlight colours so we can start separating what's the face and what's not the face. And then we'll add in all the fur as well. So I will just bring that a bit closer so you can see all those steps again. So this was the C shape we added in all around here. And then we added that oval shape on top. And then we added in all the fluff down the back of his back. And onto his leg. And then we did the fur on his head as well, going straight up at the top, so it's got a nice spiky hair at the top, and then it goes out to the left and out to the right as well. Don't worry, it will look like a sloth in a minute. So the next bit then, I'm going to mix up a bit more paint because I've actually used up all of my colour already. So same colour as before. If you've still got loads left, then that's perfect. If not, then I'll just mix up a little bit more. Okay. So the first one we'll do is this top arm up here, just because it's the easiest one to add in. So I'm going to start with my top of my brush, the long bristles, or just holding it at a diagonal line. And I'm going to go like this side of the, on the right hand side of the tree, just above his head. So I'm going up here, and I'm going to go down like this, all the way around the side of his face. And then we're going to fill that bit in there. Okay. Make it a little bit rounded at the top there, a bit more. And we can add a couple of little bits of fur as well, so we can then flick the brush like we did before. And this time all the fur is going to be going up towards that top right corner. We can also bring it just a little bit over the top of the tree as well. Okay, don't worry, things will become a little bit clearer when we start adding in those lighter colours as well. The next two are going to be this line in here and this line in here. So what we need to do is have our brush so that all the bristles are lining up along the right hand side of the tree. And what I'm going to do is maybe make this a little bit lighter, so a little bit of white into the colour so you can see it a bit clearer. And I'm going to have long bristles pointing up, so I'm just starting flat along the tree on the other side, so on the right hand side, and all I'm going to do is push it round a little bit, and then I'm going to come down and lift off. And then we can fill this part in, so in between the tree, and then we can make it a little bit thicker as it curves around. And you might want to make it a little bit lighter so you can see where the arm is coming in. Or you can keep it the same colour, it's absolutely fine. As long as you can see it, that's all that matters at the second. And I'm going to make it a little bit thicker where it joins into the body. So it's like a curved line all the way around. So he's got a nice big arm in there. Hopefully you can see this okay. Don't worry if it starts to go a little bit, if it looks a bit complicated at this point, that's absolutely fine. When we add in the light colours, it will become a lot clearer in your own painting. So the next one is exactly the same thing. So we're starting on the edge of the tree on the right hand side, but this time it's going to join in with the bottom of the C shape, if that makes sense. I'm going to curve round and join it into that bottom part in there. And then curve it round. Okay, can you see his arm in here and then his leg in there? So we've got two curved lines starting from the right hand side of the tree. Pull the brush out over to the right and then keep it the same direction. So you want to keep the brush always pointing up to the top left corner, and you can put it down and then flick it up as if it's going to be going up towards his face. In there. Okay, so when we've got those bits in, please do pause the video at any point. If there's any bits that you're not sure about, just pause that video, it's absolutely fine. The next bit we're going to add in is all the highlights. So I'm going to now switch to a slightly smaller brush. So if you have got a cropped one like this, then I would possibly use this one, just because I find that it's the easiest one to use. Or if you don't have one of those brushes, then you can always use a small round brush. So I'm going to start with adding in a slightly lighter colour. So I'm going to mix in a little bit more white into the colour we use for the sloth's base. So a little bit of white into that browny kind of colour, the browny grey kind of colour. So it's not loads whiter, it's just a little bit lighter. And we're going to add in the face first. So it's the easiest bit. We'll start with this bit up here, and then we'll add in the arms as well. So again, this bit looks a bit odd. Kind of looks like he's wearing a mask, like he's going to a little masked ball or something. But when we add in the eyes and the mouth and the nose, it does look very cute. So a little bit more white. I'm going to make it a slightly more grey colour. So I'm going to add a little bit more black again. But it's just a couple of shades lighter. So lots of white and then a little bit of black, just to keep it grey. Something a bit like this. And what we need to do is start with almost like eyebrows. So I'll bring this a bit closer so you can see. And we're going to start right in the middle of the sloth's face. So remember, this is the face in here. And we're going to start right in the middle with a little dot. Make sure that's definitely in the middle. Okay. A little dot right in the middle of his face. And from here, we're going to add in 2 eyebrows. So our long bristles, or it's like a monobrow. So long bristles are pointing down, or if you're using a brush like this, doesn't matter which way around you hold it, as long as you're starting on that dot and you're flicking up the way. Okay, so I'll just show you on here first. So I'm just going to flick it up nice and small, and I'm going to go over to the right hand side. So can you see I'm adding in a big eyebrow, like a big bushy eyebrow. Sorry, my chair is super squeaky today. So it gets a little bit taller over that side, so it's like eyebrow here. And then same thing going the other way. And now it's starting to look sloth-like, doesn't it? So you want that middle bit to be a little bit shorter, and then it goes a little bit higher on the tip of his eyebrows. Make sure they're fairly even. We have to sort this eyebrow out. A little bit wonky. Okay. And then we need to add in the bottom part, which is like, it's here all the way down to the cheeks and then round under the chin. So it's kind of like a triangular shape with a rounded bottom edge for his chin. So I'll show you again on here. I'll show you on here first. So this time we want our long bristles pointing up. And what we're going to do is just start by going straight down, kind of like the nose in there. And then I'm going to flick the brush out to the sides to build up to make a nice triangular shape. You're going to try and make it as even as you can on both sides. Kind of looks like we're adding a mustache into his face. That's the kind of thing we're doing. I'm doing lots of little dashes so it looks like he's nice and fluffy. So no big long lines, just keep them nice and short. Okay, and when we've done that little bit, we can then go in and add in some highlights on his arms and leg and back. So I'm going to start with the long bristles pointing upwards, and I'm going to do lots of little dashes going along the left hand side of his face like this. Just lots of short, really short choppy flicks. just going down his back. Okay, and then when we've done a couple of those, we can then add in some longer lines for his arm hairs. So these ones are going to start going straight down. So just on the left-hand side of his arm, these ones are going to go straight down towards the bottom of the canvas. And these can be quite long, and they can actually have a little bit of a wiggle in them as well. So you can twist the brush a little bit so they're a little bit wavy. And as we start working our way around the arm, what's going to happen is they're going to start pushing over towards the right-hand side corner. So at the start, they're pointing down, and then as you work your way around, they're going to start leaning over towards the bottom right corner. And then when you get even further around, they're going to start going towards the side, so they're getting more horizontal, like this. So you can see each time we move around the arm, the direction changes slightly. And you want to make sure these are nice and long, so they're overlapping the bottom of the arm there. Remember to twist them as well in some bits. You can add some wiggly lines in. And then as you're going towards the end of your arm, these little bits in here need to be going up towards the top right corner, like that. So they're going up and up and up. Okay, so hopefully these are looking a lot fluffier now, a bit more hairy. And then we're going to do the same thing on the leg as well. So this time these lines are going to be even longer. So remember, on the left-hand side, they're going straight down towards the bottom of the canvas. And then as we get towards the right-hand side, they need to start curving towards that bottom right diagonal. And then they're getting more and more flat. As they go round. And then up towards that top corner. On the other side. So it's now really starting to take shape. So take a step back, because close up it looks a little bit freaky, but when you take a step back it looks sloth-like. So I do definitely suggest, if you've got a second, take a step back, take a little photo, and then yeah, it looks nice. So then the last little bit we're going to do, the last two bits we're going to do with the highlight colour, is to add in a couple of flicks on the arm that's curving round the branch. So this time these ones are going to be going right up to the top and curving round onto his little hand. There we go. It's looking very, very fluffy. Oh yeah, the last little bit, sorry, with this same colour is just to add in a couple of little highlight flicks just on the top of his head in here. So we're going to long bristles pointing down. So I'm going to do a couple of little flicks. I'm pressing so lightly with the brush. Okay. Okay, so when we've done all of those bits, the next colour is to add some white into it. So I'm going to rinse off the brush, and I'm going to, again, just mix on top of the colour we've just used, but this time I'm going to add loads and loads of white. And that's the only colour we're going to add into it. We're not going to add any black or anything. I'm just adding a big blob of white. So we're going to get these lovely bright highlights now on the arms to make it stand out really nicely. And then once we've done those bits, we're going to add in some dark black lines to get the shadow underneath the arms and in here. And then with that same colour, we'll add in the eyes and the claws, nose, mouth. So we're really, really nearly there now. So I've just added in a big blob of white into that colour we just used for the face and the first layer of arm and leg hairs and things. I'm going to add a bit more water into that. And I'm going to use this colour now to really emphasise the arms. So I'm going to start right in here, so at the top of the arm, and this time these are going to stand out a lot more. So I'm going to add lots of little wiggly lines. And I'm going to flip them out, mostly sitting on the top of the arm. And then I can go a little bit more to the right. I wouldn't add loads of these hairs on the bottom half of the arm though. We'll save that bit for the shadowy colours. There we go, and then we can do the same colour on the leg as well. So I would start just underneath the arm on the left, so going down the back as well. And then we can start adding in the curved wiggly lines on the leg. Okay, it's starting to look super cute now. And the last little bit for this highlight colour is to go on the top of the arm that's going around the tree and onto his hand at the top there. If you want to add a little bit of highlight maybe into his face, you can do. I might just scrape off loads and loads of that lighter paint on the side of the palette, so I've barely got anything on the brush at all. And with a really, really dry brush, I'm just going to go along the top of his eyebrows, just so that they look like they're a little bit more highlighted. So I'm just using the brush with long bristles pointing down. I'm just doing a couple of little dashes with that slightly light colour we just used, but I've taken loads of it off the brush, so it's really, really dry on the brush. Okay. Just add a little bit of a highlight onto that bit. So please let me know if you've got any questions or anything like that. If you're stuck with anything, just let me know. But I'm sure they're all looking fantastic. I'm very excited to see these. So the last colour we're going to add in before we add in neat white at the very end is to add black. So I'm going to rinse off the brush again, and I'm just going to pick up some neat black by itself. So no other colours in the paint now, just a little bit of water and a little bit of black. And I'm going to wipe it off on the side of the palette like this, still with the same brush, whatever one you're using, just to make sure that the paint is not too thick on the brush, because we don't want to go too crazy with this colour, because we want to keep it nice and light. So the main bit for the black to go in is underneath the face. So on this gap in here, I'm just going to add in a couple of little dashes like this underneath his face, really, really lightly. And then we can add in a couple of these darker lines underneath the arm as well. So a couple of little flicks. Just going in here. And on his little tummy as well. It's just making it a little bit more defined now. Okay, and I'm going to do a couple along the bottom part of his back. So this little bit, the bottom left corner. And going along the bottom part of the leg as well. Okay, so this is very exciting now because we're on to the details in his face, which is super exciting. So you can either carry on with your cropped brush, or you can move on, if you've got the option, to use a little rounded brush. And it's up to you. Have a little try. I think if you do have a small brush, I would definitely use that one, just because it's a little bit easier. But if not, just use whatever one you have and just press really, really lightly with the brush to make sure we don't get too much paint coming off in one go. So we'll start with the eyes. So I'm moving on to my slightly smaller brush. But yeah, it's up to you. Actually, I'll show you with the cropped one first, because I did say you just needed 2 brushes. So I'll show you with the cropped one first, because it's definitely doable. But if you do have the option of a 3rd one, I would grab it. So if you're using this brush, I would use it backwards. So now only using the long bristles at the end. So what we need to do is start with 2 dots to mark in the eyes. So we'll just start with 2 little dots right in, just underneath the eyebrows, in the centre. I'm going to just do 2 little dots to start with, so we can definitely get them in the right place. He looks very unimpressed the second, doesn't he? And then from here, we're going to add in the kind of like, if you picture sunglasses, and they're kind of flatter on the top and then a little bit curved on the sides, that's the kind of shape that we want to go for. So I would just use the tip of the brush. I'm adding in these 2 curved lines, so the top and the bottom first, and then the lines on the side a little bit more rounded. So the top and the bottom a little bit straighter. So it just looks like he's wearing sunglasses, really, is the kind of thing we're going for. And then on the other side as well, same thing. Make sure they're kind of equally spaced apart and everything like that. So if you want to use a smaller brush, then you just need to use the very tip of it with a little bit of water, a little bit of black, and you can just paint it in. But everyone's got their different preferences. You can use whichever brush you find easiest. Oh, got one a lot bigger than the other. Let me just sort my eyes out. So yeah, make sure they're the same kind of size, same distance apart from the middle of the face as well. And then we will add in the claws and the nose and the mouth as well. I think this is the hardest bit, actually, is trying to get them the same on both sides. But I wouldn't stress too much about this bit, because we have got the highlights to add in. And what we don't want to do is keep overworking the eyes, because what happens is they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And mine are already absolutely huge. But I think he'll look quite cute. When we've got the highlights in, I think he'll look quite adorable. So when we've got our eyes in, we can add in a little upside down triangle for the nose. So in the centre of the face, a little bit lower down, I'm just going to add in a little triangle. So the widest part is at the top, and then it goes down into a point for the nose. Again, make sure it's nice and even. And then the last little bit for the face is to add in the very cute smiley mouth. So I would start with a little smiley face just in the middle, just going straight down and back up again. And then once you've got that very even smiley face, we can then extend it, because their smiles kind of curve around to the side a bit. So once we've got that shape in, we can then start from the edge and add in a slight curved line either side. Okay. And then it's going to make mine a little bit bigger. The last little bit before we add in the highlights is to add in our 3 claws on the top arm. So just coming out of the top arm, I'm going to add in 3 claws, quite long. Sloths have really, really big claws so they can grip on and hang on to their trees. So I'm going to add the middle one. It's going to be a little bit longer than the other 2. Just bring it a bit closer. So I've got 1 and then 2 and a little bit shorter one on the end there. And then the last little bit then is to use some white to finish off our sloths. So I'm going to use the wooden part of the brush. So I'm going to use a little dot of white on the tip of the brush. And in the eyes, I'm going to add in 2 dots on the left-hand side, like this. Just 1 dot, 2 dots. Same thing on the other side as well. So on the other eye, I'll do 1 dot, 2 dots. And then to make it look like the eyes are a bit more finished, we're just going to add in 2 little dashes on the corner of the eyes. So on the left-hand side on this one, I'm going to add a little dash that goes round and in. And then same thing on the other side. So starting from the edge and curving in. Okay. My eyes are absolutely huge. And then the next little bit is to add a little highlight on the tip of his nose. So just a little dot. And then we can add in some white highlights through the fur as well. So you can use whatever brush you like to use. And I'm just going to use a little bit of white to get the last little bits of highlight going through the fur. So these ones are going to stand out the most. So I would make these nice and wiggly and nice and thin. I'm going on the top of the legs, top of the arms. I like to do a couple of little flicks on the top of arm at the top here, the top arm at the top. And then I think that's pretty much everything you need to know for our gorgeous sloth. I think in the original one we've got a very cheeky little tongue sticking out. So if you want to add a tongue in, you absolutely can. I think I'm going to add one into mine. So to get the tongue, we just need to mix a bit of red and white together. So if you've got that pink from earlier, if you used pink before, then I would use that one. But if not, mix up a little bit more. And I'm going to just go onto the side of the mouth. And I'm just going to add in a little flick on the other side. So it's like a little tongue shape sticking out on the side. It's a very, very pink tongue. So I'm going to add a bit more white over the top. There we go. Very cheeky little sloth on my canvas. A second. So, as I said at the beginning, I think the most important part of your paintings is there's 2 really important parts. The first one is to sign your paintings. So when you've done all of your details and you're happy with your sloth, I would sign your paintings using any brush that you've got, or you can use a little Sharpie pen or something like that just to finish it off. So I've signed it in one of these corners at the bottom, or on the back you can sign it as well. And really importantly, you need to name your sloths. So I think I'm going to call mine Stephen. There we go. So I've got Stephen the Sloth. So you can do whatever name you like. I think, yeah, we've already got Sid the Sloth, haven't we, from Ice Age. But you can, yeah, put any name you like. And it might be nice to put it on the back of your canvas. Or you can even label it on the front as well. It's totally up to you. So, yeah, the most important part now is to sign it. Name your sloths, really important. See how cheeky they look. And then take a little photo as well. So it's really important to take a step back from your painting. See it from a little bit of a distance. because that was quite a lot of painting in such a short amount of time. So I really, really hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope everyone's happy with the paintings that they've achieved today. We've got loads and loads and loads of events coming up soon, so make sure you keep looking at the website for all of the updates. And just to let you know, we have got a discount code on at the second. So if you book any event between now and Sunday, when you go to checkout, there's a little button that says voucher code. And you can apply a voucher code that's labelled Paint Me 15. So Paint Me 15. And if you pop that into your checkout on the voucher code, then you can get 15% off your events. So definitely use that. Don't forget to use it. Maybe write it down, pop it somewhere safe, and then use it whenever you book some more events. So that's any event from now until whenever, but if you book it before Sunday, you can use that code. Don't forget, you can go onto the Brush Party shop as well and get all of your equipment in there. I think everything's back in stock, but you can go onto brushpartyshop.co.uk and everything's in there. So you've got aprons, canvases, paints, brushes, everything you need for a brush party at home is all on there. And I'm going to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to share your photos with us through email or Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. We love to see your paintings. It's very cheeky sloths. But thank you very much for joining me today, and I will see you all again very soon. Enjoy the sunshine. Bye!